working on a date for a planning meeting in August. There are things that we have talked about that, different priorities, different programs that we have as a council, cleaning up the city, the graffiti program, all of these things need to be in the forefront of things. These are going to get done. If we have to not trim that tree over there this year, then that tree's not going to get trimmed, but this sidewalk is going to be cleaned. Those types of things, and I think those are our decisions to make.
Two things that I would like to touch on and maybe see adjusted in the budget.
Okay, I'm going to write those down because we've got these two over here. We've got the engineering, capital engineering budget.
Mm-hmm. But we need to, I don't want us just to know about it. I want us to decide what that figure is.
Right now, yeah.
So that we can finish it and then go on.
City Attorney and Mike, what are yours?
Internal services and retiree medical.
Oh, yeah. Okay, talk about internal services.
Okay, so these internal services charges that are being charged to all these departments that inflate their budgets, why don't we, so I'm looking at like IT, for instance. So in the fire department, they have an internal services to IT, computers, and telephones for $172,500. Why don't we just take all these IT charges, put it into the IT budget, and that way it's not part of the fire budget or the police budget or public works budget or finance budget. It's part of the IT budget. It's what IT does.
That would be the perfect world, Mike.
I look at internal services as a way to not be 100% transparent in the budget. And that's what these internal services charges are doing, is they're making things less transparent. The other thing on these, I brought up at retiree medical. Why can't we have a separate budget for retiree medical so that it's not being charged to each department? Because it's not a department charge. Because if the police department were to go away, we would still have retiree medical charges that are being paid out of the police department. I think there should be a separate budget item for retiree medical, and all those retiree medical charges go in there. Because whether we have a police department, we have a fire department, we have a public works department, we're still paying that, whether those departments are there. And they're being charged in fire, police, public works, name the department, they're being charged. They need to have their own separate.
Is that a reasonable option, Alex? I know we don't have our finance director here, but.
Yeah, I would want to ask, it's logical on the face of the question. I would want to consult and make sure that is a good approach. I think that when we have our next finance director on board, I think that's something that we'll talk about right away at the beginning.
Let me preface this with, when we show our fancy pie charts that show the police budget in a pie chart, they don't see how much the city's paying in retiree medical because it's buried in the police department budget or the fire department budget. This way, it's brought out on its own so everybody can see it in your face. This is what we're paying.
I honestly can't see why that could not be an option, because all you're really doing is adding a piece to the pie. I mean,
it's a good question. And we've had the internal services conversation every year.
Every year we talk about internal services. Every year.
It's something that hangs us all up. And
so then it goes back to
accounting measures.
We can say it till we're blue in the face, but as somebody said out here, who's really in charge? If we say this is what we want from the council directing staff to do this, and then staff never does it, then who's in charge? Or is the council in charge, or is staff in charge?
So we will bring that back to you when we start formatting the budget in the next cycle.
I guess, but Alex, the question is, why does it even have to come back to us? Why can't it be just something that's implemented? Why can't it just be done as a separate item?
So here's what I would say is have finance create a fund for employee medical, take every department's budget of employee medical and move it over.
Retiree medical, excuse me. And all of this doesn't change the amount of money in the
No.
bank.
That's correct.
No, it doesn't.
Correct.
No,
It
but you,
just changes each department's budget numbers.
And the same concept for IT. If IT supports all the departments,
absolutely.
I understand the concept of sharing the cost of the IT support, but the cost is there, and I think you're going to have a better picture of what the true costs are if it's in one cost center, just IT. There could be value added for each department to know how much IT support they're getting, but
But they would know that.
they would know that anyhow. And I think for the visibility overall, it makes sense to do those cost center adjustments like that. And we might find others that are similar to that, where the costs are spread through the departments, and we don't necessarily need them to be done that way. So I think that, and really the objective is the visibility.
Right.
So
Yes, and to be able to look at something and say, this is the true cost of that department. We understand overhead, we understand depreciation, but it doesn't need to necessarily, that's the cost of doing the business, it's not the cost of that particular department.
And when we accomplish that, the other thing that we can achieve is something that I know Carly has been asking for, and we're getting it now, but it's something that will be very beneficial, is looking at how we're doing on a month-to-month basis, quarterly basis, semi-annual basis on those different cost centers, because you can see the percentage of the year that we are into in the fiscal year, and you can get a very quick, at a glance, look at what each of those cost centers line items are and a percentage. So if we're, for example, if we're 75% into the fiscal year, one quick look is you look at the bottom line for every department and see if they're close to 75%.
That's right.
If they're not, then you go into the detail and see where it's off. And that's the kind of visibility that makes for a much more efficient operation, and it makes us much more in tune with how the job is getting done.
What's really going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is, and those are costs that departments have no control over whatsoever.
Right, exactly. There's nothing that they can do.
It's like the library and
Yeah.
the overhead that they get, it's like.
And even PD,
no, that's
there's
not
nothing
it.
that they can do to help that part of their budget.
Yeah, they can't cut it.
They can't cut it.
No.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So the mayor said that when we have our quarterly budget update and our workshop, that we'll delve deep into these categories, and maybe internal services is the first thing we should talk about.
But I think it needs to be reported out differently at this point, so that in this budget, it's a different line, and it's not charged to each. You know, it can be in a separate category.
Of its own.
It has its own fund.
Here's PD, here's fire. These are what, quote, is charged to those departments, but it's not in their department budget.
That way it has its own fund number in the accounting software.
Liability does.
So I'm down a finance director right now, and this is, I
But
think,
this
a
is-
Herculean task.
This is good instruction to whoever
Yes.
comes
Well,
on.
we don't think that you have to do it tomorrow, but just know that you're going to do it. So that, understand that we don't have a finance director right now, but that's the direction in which we want it to be.
Okay.
And in order for us to feel comfortable about passing this budget, it would have to be with the idea that that's what we would do. Pull it out,
Needs to be made.
and that change needs to be made.
I would agree. Capital engineering. Dollar amount. Alex, what do you think would be a good dollar amount?
How about we use the 500,000 and bring it back, look at it in the quarterly?
Okay.
That may impact the ability to hire the assistant civil engineer, in which case we would use external consultants, and we'll have to evaluate
To
that.
scrutinize our numbers and find that out. And I feel like we don't do that. We're just like, oh, if it goes over, then, and it can't be like that.
Well, let me ask you this, Alex. If you said that it might impact the assistant civil engineer, what number would be reasonable?
Well, look at 2016.
Yeah.
What was it, were you here in 2016, Nino? What was our staffing level in capital engineering?
It's exactly as it is now.
Exactly as it is
Right
now.
now.
And last year we were down because we lost people.
We lost people, they cash out. And so I guess a reasonable number could be last year's actual, because you have two, so it'd be somewhat conservative. The intent on that was to be, because you're going to spend the staff costs in one form or another. The intent there was to actually, instead of under budgeting and asking for money later, the intent there was to have what we thought would be a little bit more than actual, so we would give you money at the end. Trying to, as we talked about, kind of the things that we do that we can't charge to a project, trying to actually capture that in real numbers, and then not having to ask you more when it doesn't happen, right? That was the intent. I don't know the exact numbers because I had.
And we're not looking at exact numbers.
Yeah, I had prepared a draft of it, and then we had a city engineer that was here for a short time, changed it, and that's what got in there. So I can't do that at this point, but I think something similar
So do you
to
think?
the actual.
So do you think that the 500,000 would still enable you to have that assistant engineer? Assistant.
Versus.
At least to hire them.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're looking at
Well,
a
that's
minimum of 6 month revise.
At one of the meetings when we discussed the potential funding
Right.
of that, I actually have a philosophical difference on that position versus what was put there by the prior city engineer, because the way it's written, our associate position, the way it's written here, it is not equal to an associate position in another agency. I think you're going to get a lower level of staff, which I don't think is what we need at this time. I'm going to let the new city engineer make that determination when he gets here. If it was me, I would just hire a consultant and stretch those dollars, because we could pay for the services we need, and we don't need those services.
Well, that sounds good to me.
So should we go with 450 or 500? 450? 450. 450. And that's what I say. You know, you get into this, and we see that we absolutely have a need, total necessity, and maybe it can be charged off. Then adjust
Exactly.
your budget.
Exactly.
I mean, we've got to be dealing with reality, not about, well, I want this higher number because then if I don't spend the money, I'll get to roll it to next year. Nobody rolls anything anymore.
No, they just
it's
use it.
zero-based budgeting every year. So we can go with that. Bonnie, your city attorney number.
Oh. Okay, so I think this is all of our responsibility,
Yes, I do.
because it isn't all on the city attorney's shoulders from one point, because it's how much staff time is taking of the city attorney. It's litigation that should have been avoided because maybe we weren't as cognizant of what was happening outside in the city, such as, as little as, raised sidewalk or any of those types of things that we end up getting sued over because somebody falls, and of course that takes on a whole nother problem. But first of all, you don't like to see anybody hurt. Secondly,
This is a good time to announce, everybody needs to get the app, YourGov, on your phone. Goes on both smartphones and iPhones. When you see something, take a picture of it with your phone, and it automatically goes to Public Works. Whether it's a cracked sidewalk, a lifted sidewalk, a tree branch over a stop sign, a lot of us already have this on our phones, and it really comes in handy. It saves you a phone call. It saves them writing anything up. It's called YourGov. It's orange. Thank you. Go ahead.
okay, so I think that although I wish it were still a lot less, I think because of where we are now, and we still have things that we're dealing with that need to be addressed and taken care of, I would be reluctantly to agree to $1 million budget. And even that, you know, we all hear that number and we go, oh my God. And it's reality today, but I still think that we could do, all of us can do our due diligence and be more aware of keeping those costs down on a number of levels. So I'm going to throw that in.
Yeah, that was on my list too, and I was thinking more like 800,000. That would be a nice weaning number.
Anybody else? Mike?
The lower the better.
It is lower the better. We will be having probably several marijuana pot shops that have opened in the last few weeks that we will be taking to court, TROs, and doing that. But, you know,
Which is what we've had to do
in
this
the
last
past.
year.
Exactly.
Which have we,
had a lot
do
of
they get fined? Like $1,000 a day or something? Because they could be paying those attorney fees, you know?
The attorney's fees, we go after not only the tenant but the property owner, and sometimes we actually have recovered fees, I believe, sometimes.
I mean, like Banning goes into their city hall and they pay $1,000 cash every single day to keep up their place.
Yeah, but the point of it is, we don't even
Not
own
allowed
the place.
We don't want the place, but at least we're going to be paying for fighting it instead of out of our own pocket.
Yep, we do go after attorneys and court costs. Sometimes they bail. Okay, so I have 800 on the table and I have 1,000 on the table.
A million.
A million, I'm sorry. See, I wanted
I
even
think,
more.
I mean, this is crystal ball stuff when
Yeah,
it
it
comes
is.
to city
It
attorney.
is.
And we all know that we have devolved to a litigious society. Everybody is out to sue everybody for something, it seems. And so it's really difficult to predict and have any kind of idea other than looking at your historical experience. And even that is still an educated guess.
It is.
Because all it takes is one trip and fall and the right attorney and they go after us. So, you know, it's and we're just talking about those kinds of things, but there's a myriad of other city attorney services that nobody ever really sees that keeps us on the straight and narrow, and it keeps us solvent.
And
Those-
certainly not
those-
having management positions have increased that the participation of the city attorney services, because we don't have somebody in that spot, in the management spot, to take care of it. So
But with the
totally understood.
the public safety contracts, the MOUs that we have just gone
Right.
for 5 years, that will lower attorneys' costs and negotiation costs considerably. So, and that's always a big deal.
But what just drives me crazy is we talk like we're the only city within miles, and there's other cities that have bigger population and lower attorney fees. So we have comparisons. I think you've done a report.
Yeah, I did. I checked 8 other cities within the Inland Empire that were close to our population, and you know, it's funny because you can dig out those numbers as you see them openly, but you really don't know how much is hidden. So absolutely, we were much higher per capita than any of those cities. But again, when I checked, you check, you know, one spot, and you go to the next one, check that spot, city attorney fees or services, and again, you don't know how much of that is hidden within their budget, how much other dollars are hidden in their budget for their attorney fees. So, you know, you can try and do your homework, and there's always something to throw a stone on because it's not what you thought it was. I still think we pay too much, but again, it's the responsibility of City Hall to keep those costs down where they can. And these last couple of years have pushed the limit. And I think we just need to do a better job of watching what we're actually asking the city attorney to do beyond litigation. And bear in mind, he's got the ordinances, he's got all the other things, the MOU in the safety issues this last year. So it's not just litigation, but I think that we just, as a whole, staff needs to take a better look at what they're actually asking for for his services. So.
And as we talked about before, Alex, making sure that we're not abusing those services, because I'm afraid that our attorney will step in because he's not going to let it fall. Some people are like that, and they will do anything to make sure. And I think that we may have some overusage problems too.
So if I may address that issue. We've talked to the department heads, and we are working actively to address those issues in each department and really limit the interaction and contact with the city attorney's office. So there's been reports that different departments were in the process of preparing where they were going to be looking to the city attorney to write resolutions or staff reports, and we said, no, you're doing it in your department. So we're already making those changes.
Good.
Mayor, if I might.
As spoken by the city attorney.
Even though unasked.
Yes.
Yeah.
You certainly can pick a number that you would like it to be, that you're in prerogative. I do pay quite a bit of attention each year as to what you're spending and where you're spending it. And when I propose a budget, I do base it on not just what happened last year, but what I think is going to happen in the coming year, and also what's happened in the past 5 years. There's been no year in the last decade that you've spent less than $1 million. That's not because we're overcharging you. You're going to do an RFP for city attorney services, and I think you'll find that our rate is very competitive in the market. The fact of the matter is you are an intense utilizer of city attorney services. It's very difficult to look at any of the other comparable cities and look at their budget and figure out what the city attorney costs are, because Hemet is unique. In fact, Hemet is pretty open with how much it spends on city attorney services. You have a line item budget that shows the full cost of what you spend on all of your attorneys. Right there in the budget, you open it up, boom, that's where it is. That is not the case, as I'm sure you found, in some other cities where you have to look for 8 or 9 different budgets to find out where all the city attorney costs are and other litigation costs are. We have a special arrangement with the city of Hemet where we charge you a not to exceed fixed price, capped $390,000 a year for all of your general services, regardless of how much you use them. That covers drafting of your ordinances and resolutions and attending meetings, talking with your department heads and your city manager and each of the council members. Because you use a lot of services, I wanted to have those available. Haven't changed that number in 5 years. Right? That's a fixed number. It stays the same. And that really is what you're talking about. If you're going to limit department heads from talking to us, that's already covered under your fixed price retainer. I've taken care of that for you because I know that's a hard animal to get a hold of. And frankly, you want people to talk to me to avoid problems. It's when people don't talk to me sometimes that problems come up. Where you spend your money is on litigation, labor, and personnel issues. Litigation, labor, and personnel issues alone for last year were $960,000. Just last year. Hopefully, litigation will go down. Hopefully, personnel costs and labor will reduce. The city has had a difficult time with that over the years. Now, I will say that when I provided the $1.4 million budget to city manager and his staff in March of this year, we had some assumptions that have changed. One, we had a couple large pieces of litigation. At that point, we were planning on going to trial. We've now settled those. Those aren't going to go to trial. So that's helpful. We anticipated that labor negotiations would go on longer than they have and been more intensive. I think that that is going to resolve. We've had several personnel investigations and some personnel actions. I have to believe that we'll probably continue with the same amount of that while your financial and structural turmoils continue. But clearly, you can reduce below 1.4, probably down to 1.1 or 1.2, and I think be pretty realistic. Now, you certainly can set it at $600,000 or $800,000, but I can almost guarantee you that we will have to not do certain things, which is fine. That is your prerogative, but I feel kind of professionally obligated to tell you that you utilize at least $1 million or more of services, whether I do it or another firm does it. That's just what you're going to need for the program of work that you have.
Cost of doing business.
It is, unfortunately, yes.
And 8 bargaining units.
Yes.
Doesn't help us.
Does not help.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Magic million. Guys okay with that? Yes?
I guess.
City attorney, $1 million. We've got capital engineering at $450. The internal services and retiree medical are going to be taken out of the individual budgets and kind of formulated as their own. Anything else?
I have a question on page 1 here on this city attorney allocation. I believe that we already fixed the negative number in here, and it's still in here. The negative 1.3?
Yep.
But it's still in there. And this just goes back to my point. I have no confidence in this. I don't have time to go through every single line item, but we voted on this 2 meetings ago. Let me just pull up the date here.
Yes, that was taken care of in the last meeting in June.
June 20th. And so last meeting, if I go back to our report, July 11th, and let's look at that number. City attorney. It's not negative on that report. So this is the whole thing. The lack of confidence is what my problem is. We apparently don't have Joy anymore. I don't know if we've paid her everything. She was a high-priced consultant, and this is still wrong. Which, by the way, are you going to give us an update on that? Because that was under contract, right? So budget-wise?
In terms of the finance?
The contract we approved through December for her?
Yeah.
Is that consultant sending somebody else?
So we have asked them to identify other people from their firm, and they're working on that. We asked them about 2 weeks ago. They haven't identified anyone yet.
Anything else, Carly, or anyone else?
I'm sure if I kept reading, we'd probably find some more, but that's huge. it was correct 2 meetings ago, and then and on the 11th it was correct, and now it's wrong again, and then this is our budget you're asking us to approve. We clearly have other problems. And I don't know why why we're always afraid to address them. We don't live in Mayberry. We don't have perfect things, and that's fine. But for us to pretend that we don't have problems, we are out of line. Okay, and I suppose we want to pass this so that we can hire a director of finance, right?
It's always helpful.
Well, let me make a motion. I move that we approve this budget as presented with a hiring freeze.
I'll second.
Council members, I believe the motion was as presented, although the council did make a number of amendments to the budget.
Excellent.
You
Yes.
want to include the amendments,
Let's
correct?
amend that with the amendments.
There was a reduction in the engineering capital budget to $450,000. There was a reduction in the city attorney budget to $1 million. And then you did, I don't think you're asking for a reaccounting or reallocation of the internal services fund or retiree medical within this budget. That would mean we'd have to redo that whole document, but you are looking for that prospectively moving forward. Is that correct?
Yes, to
I
take,
thought we were asking for it to be
take them out of the department per se. The numbers are fine.
I'm not a financial person and don't know very much about the city's budget, but I think I do know enough to know that if you're going to take all of the internal services out and make them into their own budget, you're going to want to see a document that does that. And this isn't the document that does that. So if you want that to happen as part of your 17-18 budget that you adopt, you're either going to need to adopt this one as is and then require an amended budget that reflects that to come back to you, or you're going to need to postpone your decision tonight and have the amended budget come back.
Well, if I remember Alex saying that in October we were going to be having a
Quarterly budget
quarterly
update.
budget. If those changes, passing this budget, with those changes being implemented by the October budget review, would you be open to that?
Well, the numbers for retiree medical are not going to change. The only thing that will change is that they will come out of each department and go into their own non-department budget.
Each department's budget will change. I think we know that. What that does to the overall budget, I can't say, and I think you have to allow room and flexibility for the fact that there might be some additional accounting that has to be done that we're unaware of, and that you'll need your finance director on board to do. So October is, I would hazard a guess, probably a realistic time. Is that?
We would like to have them on board in 90 days. That's
No, I mean to have the reaccounting looked at that the council is asking for, not when the finance director is going to be.
I think that's realistic.
So, Carly, I totally get your frustration. I mean, we all are frustrated.
But the best part is we can make all these changes and give them a list, and then it's going to come back wrong, just like this one. And so how are we supposed to...
That isn't the fault of the departments.
I didn't say that.
I know, but we have some key positions that need to be filled. And although I would like to say, yeah, let's just...
We have some key positions that should be doing other things or stepping up to the plate.
So, Councilmember Meyer, if I can kind of summarize, the motion was to approve the budget as amended with the changes to engineering, capital, and city attorney. There was a question about doing a reaccounting for internal services and retiree medical. Is it acceptable, part of your motion, to have that come back in October, or would you like to sooner, or
End of August.
not adopt the budget now?
Well, I think that can be done by the end of August. Yes.
If we're going to wait until the end of August, we already are working under a continuing resolution.
Yes.
The departments can continue to do their work that they need to do. We can get these corrections made, have this document brought back to us, and then we relook at it with all of the corrections made and with the other accounting adjustments made, and then we can then maybe look at passing a budget.
That is the other option. It really depends on how much the council wants to see that reaccounting.
I think the difficulty in that is we don't have a finance director.
That's right.
That's right.
And,
We don't have an
one of
assistant
the
city
things
manager.
that passing this budget does is it provides funding for that position, along with some other positions that I think are really important. So, in some ways, we're kind of chasing our tail. I'm not disputing or diminishing the value of what we're asking.
So let
I'm
me,
just trying to be
yeah.
practical.
Let me change my comment on it because it will not change the bottom line on the budget to have these things broken out by the end of August. So if that's with the 3-month revise, I'm good with that, so long as they come out of the individual budgets.
Well, I think that these items that can be changed don't need to be done by a finance director. They can be done by the finance manager or whoever's working on, whoever does this day to day.
And we should probably add to the motion to make the corrections that were mistakes in here.
Correct. And I think your motion included a hiring freeze. That was the last element that I heard. Is that correct?
I did say
Now,
that.
Was that a hiring freeze on all positions?
Everything except public safety.
Everything except public safety. All right. So you have a motion before you, and I think that
I will second that amended motion.
Mayor Pro Tem seconded it. That would mean you need to vote. I will try to recap it. Please let me know if I get this wrong. It's a motion to adopt the budget as amended. First, to correct some of the technical errors that have been noted by council already. Second, to change the engineering department's capital engineering budget to $450,000. To reduce the city attorney budget to $1 million, and then to take the internal service charges out of each of the department's budget and make them their own standalone reported costs, budget, department.
Or put into the
Yes.
budget of each department that those services are for.
Yes. And then there was a hiring freeze with all non-public safety positions.
And the correction of the attorney fund. Okay.
Correct.
Is there still room for discussion?
Motion's been made and seconded. You can discuss it
Okay, we can
unless somebody
discuss it.
calls the question.
Okay.
I have a real problem with the hiring freeze because of the positions that we're in the position that we're in right now. It would be nice to have that luxury to do a hiring freeze, but frankly, I don't think we have that luxury. I think that the departments are so understaffed at this point, and key positions that have been filled before that are just vacant at this moment, but very key to running the city, it's imperative that we don't lock ourselves into something that we regret in the near future. So I think we can be prudent and watch closely what's going on, but I just don't, I just hate to see us get locked in to a hiring freeze, per se, at this time in the game.
And I agree with Bonnie. I don't want to get locked in by people making decisions that might not be what we're totally confident in. Because if this piece of paper can't be right and then you want us to vote on it, it shouldn't be presented wrong. This is
I
a very
agree.
big document.
If I may, I'm in agreement with Bonnie's position on the hiring freeze. I think being prudent and judicious in our decision of prioritizing where we're recruiting and positions we're trying to fill can certainly accomplish some of the fiscal oversight and restraint that a hiring freeze would accomplish. But I think that there's some critical positions and they need to be filled. And we've just talked earlier about complaints about poor quality customer service, people not getting the attention at the counter that they need. And those are symptoms of staffing issues, certainly enough. It's symptomatic of perhaps other things besides just staffing issues and vacant positions, but that's a significant component that contributes to diminished service.
I would definitely agree. Again, lack of customer service goes back to lack of leadership.
That's a component?
Absolutely.
But if you have a vacant position, somebody's not there to do that job. And that means other people have to shoulder and share that burden, as Nino attested to earlier. He's oftentimes like the guy in the old Ed Sullivan show that has a lot of plates spinning and trying to keep them all from falling off the stick.
Or that, or we could make wise decisions on the council's part. Because it comes back to us.
True. Well, I guess I'm in a position where I'm more than willing to support the most of the motion, absent the hiring freeze.
I would agree with that. There's too many departments that are impacted negatively by not being able to fill their
So
positions.
can we have a substitute motion?
You can either vote on this motion, or you can make a substitute motion.
Yeah, there's first and second.
Would you accept a friendly amendment that we do prudent?
I absolutely would not.
Okay. Then there is a motion and a second on the floor that with all the amendments on here and a hiring freeze, please vote. And that motion fails. 3-2, 2-3.
Now, if I can make a substitute motion, or if I can make a motion to all the other, well, to what we mentioned before, except for the hiring freeze. Do I have a second?
A second
I'll
that?
second.
So it's the same amendments minus the hiring freeze. Please vote. And that passes 3-2. Thank you. Got some changes to make in this budget. It would have been very, very good if we'd had a finance person here to answer some of these questions, because in going through the actual budget numbers are correct. It's on the forms, the summary of revenues, expenditures, and transfers, where you start out with a negative balance on 7-1, go through the additions, deductions, and then the estimated balance at June 30th, 2018 ends up being the negative balance that you started from in the first place. And there's a lot of categories like that that I don't understand or don't have an answer to. Whether it's the rolling of the year end, I don't know when this is going to be corrected, but I would like to have answers to that at the next council meeting. Thank you. And with that, we go on to council reports. Russ?
The Water Master Board meeting is pending for August 28th, which unfortunately directly overlaps with the scheduled meeting that Mayor Pro Tem Percival and I have with the ad hoc committee to deal with the CR&R and the Association of Realtors representatives. So I understand you're going to be able to make the Water Master Board, so Mike and I can continue to hold to that that meeting of the ad hoc.
That meeting of yours is extremely important.
So that's pending, and we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. Carly?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of undermining that goes on our council, and it's very frustrating. And we give direction, and then things are done outside of the direction. And so I'd like some clarification on that.
Bonnie?
I don't have anything to report except for the homeless task force. We met yesterday, and we had the opportunity to hear what the other members had to say with regards to going on the tour of Solutions for Change. We talked about some additional issues that need to be addressed while we contemplate Solutions for Change model, which included, what do we do in the interim? That particular program could take up to 2 to 3 years to implement anyway, so there's other things that need to be addressed, such as Valley Restart and the other homeless issues in the city. The Skate Plaza Task Force, we looked at the proposals that were given to us for the feasibility study, and few members were not able to make the, we actually didn't have any type of a full, well, we didn't need a quorum, but we didn't have very many people there. So we provided them with binders for them to look at those proposals before the next meeting, and so we'll be addressing that when they come back next month. That's it.
Thank you. Mike?
Just to recap on what Russ said, we've got the trash ad hoc committee on the 28th, and there was supposed to be a joint RCTC meeting yesterday. I showed up to, that was on my calendar, and apparently it was canceled, so that's all I got. RCTC, RCA was supposed to have a joint
That's,
budget.
that is actually
Yeah, it got moved to August
August 26th or 20,
3rd.
yeah, because you and I
Somewhere
both
around
need to be there, because you're on RCA and I'm on RCTC. You
That
do
never got
double
off.
duty. We both do double duty.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
yes.
but it was still on my calendar, so I showed up and found out by the supervisor's clerk that that meeting was canceled.
Are you getting emails from RCA? Are they sending you regular?
I did, but for my city calendar, I'm not in charge. I don't do my city calendar. It's done for me, so, but it was not removed, so. But I'll be at that meeting in August.
Very good. Okay, the only one I have to report out on is the Ramona Bowl, and their concert this Thursday night, which will be the last of the regular 4, is Como La Flor, which is a tribute to Selena. $10 for adults, $5 for kids under 12, and she draws a large crowd. Ad hoc committees, public memorial.
We haven't met since the last meeting.
Okay, investment policy. I think we have all of the data that we need from other cities and from the state, so you and I can set up a meeting hopefully in the next week or so. And you already reported on the refuse delinquency. City manager.
Thank you. Had an opportunity to go on the tour of Solutions for Change to take a look at Solutions Farm and their housing program. Attended the Homeless Ad Hoc Committee. Attended the Mobility Hub community meeting earlier this afternoon. Attended the Solara community meeting with the HOA board, and about 75 or 100 residents. Councilmember Bonnie Wright, Director Jensen, Jaime Cruz, Charles Russell, Steve Wolney from our staff also participated. I think it was very well attended. We had an opportunity to discuss concerns of the residents in terms of the handover of streets, street lights, street conditions and repaving and landscaping. Had a meeting with Deputy Chief Webb on the proposed revisions to the Ramona Humane Society contract. There's going to be some changes to that contract we'll be bringing to you, probably in a study session format in a coming meeting. Had a meeting with the administrative service managers, including HR and IT, to talk about some of their challenges that they're working on. Attended a Riverside University Health Systems workshop on developing resilient communities. Attended the Chamber of Commerce's Latino Network meeting last week at La Fugata. Had an opportunity as a guest of Chief Brown to attend the County Fire Chiefs meeting at Station 4. That was a good group of folks there. It was a nice opportunity to show off our Station 4. Met with ICMA regarding the state of the plan, which is talking about employee pension investment. And then this afternoon had an opportunity to participate in a conference call in terms of the TUMF implementation through the WRCOG TUMF Ad Hoc Committee. That was pretty interesting. What they're looking at is...
Could you brief me on that?
I certainly will. Essentially what they're looking at is creating an exemption for small retail projects. And it looks like they're going to exempt projects under 3,500 square feet. It'll probably go back to the board, but that's where they're at as of this afternoon. In terms of future agenda items, I've got a number of them lined up for you at your next meeting on August 8th. We're going to be talking, we'll have a presentation from Mike Riley on employee medical. And Mike Riley is our contact over at HUB. We'll have on our work study, we'll talk about the city's response to the state audit. We'll also have a contract for the city engineer and director of engineering. And then on the 22nd of August, we have a number of items for consent calendar, including Les Schwab dormancy and the Tractor Supply dormancy, surplusing of non-value items from Public Works, Zanderson Plaza. There's some planning entitlements that you're going to need to look at. And then the River Oaks project, there's a map and some other things there that you're going to need to look at. We're also going to have a TUMF ordinance update at that meeting on the 22nd. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on the 12th of September, we'll look at the water rate structure, the overview for the work study. We'll also have a discussion on code enforcement and an overview of that. And then in addition, in upcoming meetings, we're going to be looking at SB1. There's some things that are time sensitive that we need to bring you. We're going to look at an update of engineering inspection fees. We're going to look at underground in lieu fee. That will be coming back to you. And then construction contract for Webb for well 10 for some additional permitting. And then also an additional inspection recovered from the contractor for Webb. So we bring some construction issues to you in the immediate and near future.
Very good. Any other future agenda items from council?
I would like something to be talked about. I would like maybe some sort of a report on the illegal dispensaries and how those are handled, and also on massage parlors, maybe code enforcement, or, I mean, I think we have rules on those, and it's easy to tell everyone, oh, they're taking care of it, but what does that mean? You know, there's some dangerous folks running these.
In terms of the dispensaries, are you interested? Sorry about that. In terms of the dispensaries, are you interested in a status report in terms of current litigation, or are you interested more in the kind of...
The procedures for how we deal with these
Okay.
things. Like within the guidelines of our rules. And same with the massage parlors. When they're open at 12 o'clock at night, there's definitely things going on in there that should not be going on.
got it, thank you.
And there are several. And I will give you addresses. Okay. Anything else?
I'd like to have either a work study or maybe an ad hoc on looking at the master annexation agreement with the county. There's other cities that are starting to take a look at that, and I think we need to take a look at that also, since we have a lot of areas in our sphere that could possibly have benefit to us, but it's got to be cost effective. And right now, the way the current annexation agreement is, it's not cost effective work.
And you're talking about the split, the tax split under that? Okay.
Yeah, the agreement as a whole.
Just not sustainable for cities.
Correct.
On that,
I have one thing, just an update when one's available on the Edison streetlight acquisition proposal.
oh,
You got it.
on the master annexation county split, I'd like to form an ad hoc with Mike and I on that.
Okay.
And, yes? Okay,
And would that be in lieu of a work study on the topic?
yes,
Okay.
we'll do our ad hoc, and then we'll come back with things we need to report out. Okey-doke. Should keep our plates full for a little bit. And with that, we will recess to the closed session. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on any item that's on closed session? Seeing none, we are going into closed session, and we will go upstairs.